To begin at the beginning. It is spring, moonless night in the small town, starless and Bible black, the cobble streets silent, and the hunched curters and rabbitswood limping invisible down to the slow black, crow black, fishing boat bobbing sea. The houses are blind as moles, though moles see fine tonight in the snouting velvet dingles. Or blind as Captain Cat there in the muffled middle by the pump in the town clock. The shops in mourning, the welfare hall in widow's weeds, and all the people of the lulled and dumbfound town are sleeping now. Hush, the babies are sleeping. The farmers, the fishers, the tradesmen and pensioners, cobbler, schoolteacher, postman and publican, the undertaker and the fancy woman, drunkard, dressmaker, preacher, policeman, the webfoot cocklewomen, and the tidy wives. Young girls lie bedded soft or glide in their dreams, with rings and trousseaux, bridesmaided by glowworms down the aisles of the organ-playing wood. The boys are dreaming wicked, or of the bucking ranches of the night and the jolly Rogered sea. And the anthracite statues of the horses sleep in the fields, and the cows in the byres, and the dogs in the wet-nosed yards, and the cats snap in the slant corners, or lope sly, streaking and needling on the one cloud of the roofs. You can hear the dew falling, and the hushed town breathing. Only your eyes are unclosed to see the black enfolded town fast and slow asleep. And you alone can hear the invisible starfall, the darkest before dawn minutely dew-gray stare of the black dab-filled sea where the Arethusa, the curlew and the skylark, Zanzibar, Rhiannon, the rover, the cormorant, and the star of Wales tilt and ride. Listen, it is night moving in the streets, the processional salt, slow, musical wind in Coronation Street and Cockle Row. It is the grass growing on Laregib Hill, dewfall, starfall, the sleep of birds in Milkwood. Listen, it is night in the chill, squat chapel, hymning in bonnet and brooch and bombazine black, butterfly choker and bootlace bow, coughing like nanny goats, sunking mintos, 40 winking hallelujah. Night in the fore-rail, quiet as a domino. In Aukie milkman's lofts like a mouse with gloves, in Diebread's bakery flying like black flour. It is to-night in Donkey Street, trotting silent, with seaweed on its hooves, along the cockled cobbles, past curtained fern pot, text and trinket, harmonium, holy dresser, watercolors done by hand, china dog and rosy tin tea caddy. It is night neddying among the snuggeries of babies. Look, it is night, dumbly, royally winding through the coronation cherry trees, going through the graveyard of Bethesda with winds gloved and folded and dew-doffed, tumbling by the sailors' arms. Time passes. Listen. Time passes. Come closer now. Only you can hear the houses sleeping in the streets in the slow, deep, salt and silent black bandaged night. Only you can see the blinded bedrooms, the combs and petticoats over the chairs, the jugs and basins, the glasses of teeth, thou shalt not on the wall, and the yellowing dicky bird watching pictures of the dead. Only you can hear and see, behind the eyes of the sleepers, the movements and countries and mazes and colors and dismays and rainbows and tunes and wishes and flight and fall and despairs and the big seas of their dreams. From where you are, you can hear their dreams. Captain Cat, the retired blind sea captain, asleep in his bunk in the sea-shelled, ship-and-bottled, ship-shaped best cabin of schooner house, dreams of
Never such seas as any that swamped the decks of his SS Kidwelly, bellying over the bedclothes and jellyfish slippery, sucking him down, salt deep into the davy dark, where the fish come biting out and nibble him down to his wishbone, and the long-drowned nuzzle up to him.
Remember me, Captain?
You're Dancing Williams.
I lost my step in Nantucket.
Do you see me, Captain? The white bone talking? Tom Fred the donkey man. We shared the same girl once. Her name was Mrs. Probert.
Rosie Probert, 33 Duck Lane. Come on up, boys. I'm dead.
Hold me, Captain. I'm Jonah Jarvis. Come to a bad end. Very enjoyable.
Alfred Pomeroy Jones, sea lawyer, born in Mumbles, sung like a linnet, crowned you with a flagon, tattooed with mermaids, thirst like a dredger, died of blisters.
This skull at your earhole is.
Early, Bevan. Tell my auntie it was me that pawned the Ormloo clock.
Aye, Curly.
Tell my missus. No, I never.
I never done what she said I never.
Yes, they did.
And who brings coconuts and shawls and parrots to my Gwen now?
How's it above?
The rum and lava bread.
Bosoms and robins.
Concertinas.
Ebenezer's bell.
Fighting in onions?
Sparrows and daisies.
Tiddlers in a jam jar.
Buttermilk and whippets.
Rockabye baby.
Washing on the line.
And old girls in the snug.
How's the tenors and dowlers?
Who milks the cows in Maesquin?
When she smiles, is there dimples?
What's the smell of parsley?
Oh, my dead dears.
From where you are, you can hear in Cockle Row in the spring moonless night, Miss Price, dressmaker and sweet shopkeeper, dreams of
Her lover, tall as the town clock tower, Samson syrup gold maned, whacking thighed and piping hot, thunderbolt based and barnacle breasted, flailing up the cockles with his eyes like blow lamps, and scooping low over her lonely, loving, hot water bottled body. Mavonwe Price.
Mr. Mark Edwards.
I am a draper mad with love. I love you more than all the flannelette and calico, candlewick, dimity, crash and merino, tussore, cretonne, crepon, muslin, poplin, taking and twirling the whole cloth hall of the world. I have come to take you away to my emporium on the hill, where the change hums on wires. Throw away your little bed socks and your Welsh wool knitted jacket. I will warm the sheets like an electric toaster. I will lie by your side like the Sunday roast.
I will knit you a wallet, a forget-me-not blue, for the money to be comfy. I will warm your heart by the fire so that you can slip it under your vest when the shop is closed.
Mavonwe, before the mice gnaw at your bottom drawer, will you say?
Yes, Mark, yes. Mark, yes, yes, yes.
And all the bells of the tills of the town shall ring for our wedding.
Come now, drift up the dark. Come up the drifting sea-dark street now in the dark night, seesawing like the sea, to the Bible-black airless attic over Jack Black the cobbler's shop, where alone and savagely Jack Black sleeps in a nightshirt tied to his ankle with elastic and dreams of
chasing the naughty couples down the grass-green, goose-berried double bed of the wood, flogging the tosspots in the spit and sawdust, driving out the bare, bold girls from the sixpenny hops of his nightmares.
Ach thee fie! Ach thee fie!
Evans the Death, the Undertaker.
Laughs high and aloud in his sleep, and curls up his toes as he sees, upon waking 50 years ago, snow lie deep on the goose field behind the sleeping house. And he runs out into the field where his mother is making Welsh cakes in the snow, and steals a fistful of snowflakes and currants, and climbs back to bed to eat them, cold and sweet under the warm white clothes, while his mother dances in the snow kitchen, crying out for her lost currants.
And in the little pink-eyed cottage next to the Undertaker's lie, alone, the 17 snoring gentle stone of Mr. Waldo, rabbit catcher, barber, herbalist, cat doctor, quack, his fat pink hands palms up over the edge of the patchwork quilt, his black boots neat and tidy in the washing basin, his bowler on a nail above the bed, a milk stout and a slice of cold bread pudding under the pillow, and, dripping in the dark, he dreams of.
This little piggy went to market. This little piggy stayed home. This little piggy had roast beef. And this little piggy had none. And this little piggy went wee, 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 all the way home to... No!
Yes, blood and love.
Oh, what will the neighbors say? What will the neighbors?
Poor Mrs. Waldo.
What she puts up with.
Never should have married.
If she didn't have to.
Same as her mother.
That's a husband for you.
Bad as his father.
And you know how he ended.
Up in the asylum.
Crying for his mom.
Every Saturday.
He hasn't got a leg.
And carrying on.
With that Miss Beatty Morris.
Up in the quarry.
I've seen her baby.
It's got his notes.
Oh, it makes my heart bleed.
What he'll do for a drink.
He sold the piano.
And her sewing machine.
Falling in the gutter.
Talking to the lamppost.
And using language.
Singing in the W.
Poor Mrs. Waldo.
Oh, Waldo!
Hush, love, hush. I'm widower Waldo now.
Oh, Waldo!
Yes, sir, Mom?
Oh, what will the neighbors say? What will the neighbors?
Black as a chimney.
Ringing doorbells.
Breaking windows.
Making mud pies.
Stealing currants.
Talking words.
Saw him in the bushes.
Playing witchins.
Send him to bed without any supper.
Give him centipods and lock him in the dark.
Off to the reformatory.
Off to the reformatory. Learn him with a slipper on his BTM.
Waldo! Waldo, what are you doing with our Matty?
Give us a kiss, Matty Richards.
Give us a penny then.
I've only got a halfpenny.
Lips is a penny.
Will you take this woman, Matty Richards?
Dulcie Prothero.
Effie Bevan.
Lil the glue pot.
Mrs. Flusher. Lodwin Bowen.
To be your awful wedded wife.
No,
Now, in her iceberg white, holily laundered crinoline nightgown, under virtue's polar sheets, in her spruced and scarred, dust-defying bedroom in trig and trim bay view, a house for paying guests, at the top of the town, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, widow, twice, Mr. Ogmore, linoleum, retired, and Mr. Pritchard, failed bookmaker, who, maddened by besomming, swabbing, and scrubbing, the voice of the vacuum cleaner and the fume of polish, ironically swallowed disinfectant, fidgets in her rinsed sleep, wakes in a dream, and nudges in the ribs dead Mr. Ogmore, dead Mr. Pritchard, ghostly on either side.
Mr. Ogmore, Mr. Pritchard, it is time to inhale your balsam.
Oh, Mrs. Ogmore.
Oh, Mrs. Pritchard.
Soon it will be time to get up. Tell me your tasks in order.
I must put my pajamas in the drawer marked pajamas.
I must take my cold bath, which is good for me.
I must wear my flannel band to ward off sciatica.
I must dress behind the curtain and put on my apron.
I must blow my nose.
In the garden, if you please.
In a piece of tissue paper, which I afterwards burn.
I must take my salts, which are nature's friend.
I must boil the drinking water because of germs.
I must make my herb tea, which is free from tannin.
And have a charcoal biscuit, which is good for me.
I may smoke one pipe of asthma mixture.
In the woodshed, if you please.
And dust the parlor and spray the canary.
I must put on rubber gloves and search the peak for fleas.
I must dust the blinds and then I must raise them.
And before you let the sun in, mind it wipes its shoes.
In Butcher Bynon's, Gossamer Bynon, daughter, schoolteacher, reaming deep, daintily ferrets under a fluttering hummock of chicken's feathers in a slaughterhouse that has chintz curtains and a three-pieced suite, and finds, with no surprise, a small, rough, ready man with a bushy tail winking in a paper carrier.
At last, my love,
Sighs Gossamer Bynon, and the bushy tail wags rude and ginger.
Help! Cries Organ Morgan, the organist in his dream. There is perturbation and music in Coronation Street. All the spouses are honking like geese and the babies singing opera. P.C. Attila Reese has got his truncheon out and is playing cadenzas by the pump. The cows from Sunday Meadow ring like reindeer, and on the roof of Handel Villa see the women's welfare hoofing, bloomered in the moon.
At the sea end of town, Mr. and Mrs. Floyd, the Copplers, are sleeping as quiet as death, side by wrinkled side, toothless, salt and brown, like two old kippers in a box. And high above, in Salt Lake Farm, Mr. Utah Watkins counts all night the white-faced sheep as they leap the fences on the hill, smiling and knitting and bleating just like Mrs. Utah Watkins.
34, 35, 36, 48, 89.
knit one, slip together, knit two, together, pass the slip stitch over.
Aukie Milkman, drowned asleep in Cockle Street, is emptying his churns into the Dewey River.
Regardless of expense.
And weeping like a funeral. Cherry Owen next door lifts a tankard to his lips, but nothing flows out of it. He shakes the tankard. It turns into a fish. He drinks the fish. P.C. Attila Reese lumps out of bed, dead to the dark and still fog-horning, and drags out his helmet from under the bed. But deep in the backyard lockup of his sleep, a mean voice murmurs,
"You'll be sorry for this in the morning."
and he heaves ho right back to bed. His helmet swashes in the dark.
Willy-nilly, postman, asleep up street, walks 14 miles to deliver the post, as he does every day of the night, and rat-a-tats hard and sharp on Mrs. Willy-nilly.
Oh, don't spank me, please, teacher.
Whimpers his wife at his side, but every night of her married life, she has been late to school.
Sinbad sailors over the taproom of the Sailor's Arms, hugs his damp pillow, whose secret name is Gossamer Bynron. A mogul catches Lily Smalls in the washhouse.
Oh, you old mogul!
Mrs. Rose Cottager's eldest, May, peels off her pink and white skin in a furnace, in a tower, in a cave, in a waterfall, in a wood, and waits there, raw as an onion, for Mr. Wright to leap up the burning, tall, hollow splashes of leaves like a brilliantined trout.
Call me Dolores, like they do in the stories.
Alone until she dies, Bessie Bighead, hard help, born in the workhouse, smelling of the cowshed, snores bass and gruff on a couch of straw in a loft in Salt Lake Farm, and picks a posy of daisies in Sunday Meadow to put on the grave of Gomer Owen, who kissed her once by the pigsty when she wasn't looking, and never kissed her again, although she was looking all the time. And the inspectors of cruelty fly down to Mrs. Butcher Brynon's dream to prosecute Mr. Bynon for selling
Owl meat, dog's eyes, man chop.
Mr. Bynon, in Butcher's bloodied apron, spring heels down Coronation Street, a finger, not his own, in his mouth. Straight-faced in his cunning sleep, he pulls the legs of his dreams and,
Hunting on pigback, shoots down the wild giblets.
Help!
My foxy darling.
now. Behind the eyes and secrets of the dreamers in the rocked to sleep by the sea, see the
tidbits and topsy-turvies, bobs and button tops, bags and bones, ash and rind and dandruff and nail parings, saliva and snowflakes and molted feathers of dreams, the wrecks and sprats and shells and fish bones, whale juice and moonshine and small salt fried dished up by the hidden sea.
The owls are hunting. Look, over Bethesda gravestones one hoots and swoops and catches a mouse by Hannah Reese, beloved wife. And in Coronation Street, which you alone can see, it is so dark under the chapel in the skies, the Reverend Eli Jenkins, poet, preacher, turns in his deep towards dawn sleep and dreams of
As death bedie.
He intricately rhymes to the music of Cruth and Pibgren all night long in his druid's seedy nighty in a beer tent black with parks.
Mr. Pugh, schoolmaster, fathoms asleep, pretends to be sleeping, spies Foxy round the droop of his nightcap and psst, whistles up.
Murder.
Mrs. Organ Morgan, groceress, coiled grey like a dormouse, her paws to her ears, conjures.
Silence.
She sleeps very dulcet in a cove of wool, and trumpeting Organ Morgan at her side, snores no louder than a spider.
Marianne Sailors dreams of.
The Garden of Eden.
She comes in her smock frock and clogs.
Away from the cool, scrubbed, cobbled kitchen, with the Sunday school pictures on the whitewashed wall and the farmer's almanac hung above the settle and the sides of bacon on the ceiling hooks, and goes down under the cockle-shelled paths of that apple pie kitchen garden, ducking under the gippo's cloak's pegs, catching her apron on the black currant bushes past bean rows and onion bed and tomatoes ripening on the wall towards the old man, playing the harmonium in the orchard, and sits down on the grass at his side and shells the green peas that grow up through the lap of her frock that brushes the dew.
In Donkey Street, so furred with sleep, Die Bread, Polly Garter, No Good Boyo, and Lord Cutglass sigh before the dawn that is about to be, and dream of
Arams.
Babies.
Nothing.
Tick-tock, 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 tick-tock.
time passes. Listen, time passes. An owl flies home past Bethesda to a chapel in an oak, and the dawn inches up. Stand on this hill. This is Regib Hill, old as the hills, high, cool, and green, and from this small circle of stones, made not by Druids, but by Mrs. Bynon's Billy, you can see all the town before you sleeping in the first of the dawn. You can hear the lovesick wood pigeons mooning in bed. A dog barks in his sleep farmyards away. The town ripples like a lake in the waking haze.
Less than 500 souls inhabit the three quaint streets and the few narrow by-lanes and scattered farmsteads that constitute this small, decaying watering place, which may indeed be called a backwater of life without disrespect to its natives, who possess to this day a sulky individuality of their own. The main street, Coronation Street, consists for the most part of humble two-storied houses, many of which attempt to achieve some measure of gaiety by prinking themselves out in crude colors and by the liberal use of pinkwash. Though there are remaining a few 18th century houses of more pretension, if, on the whole, in a sad state of disrepair. Though there is little to attract the hill climber, the health seeker, the sportsman, or the week-ending motorist, the contemplative may, if sufficiently attracted to spare some leisurely hours, find in its cobbled streets and its little fishing harbour, in its several curious customs, and in the conversation of its local characters, some of that picturesque sense of the past so frequently lacking in towns and villages which have kept more abreast of the times. The one place of worship, with its neglected graveyard, is of no architectural interest. The River Dewi is said to abound in trout, but is much poached.
The principality of the sky lightens now over our green hill. It is spring morning, larked and crowed and belling. Who pulls the town hall bell rope but blind cat and cat? One by one, the sleepers are wrung out of sleep this one morning, as every morning. And soon you shall see the chimney's slow up-flying snow as Captain Cat, in sailor's cap and sea boots, announces today with his loud "Get out of bed, bell."
The Reverend Eli Jenkins in Bethesda House gropes out of bed into his preacher's black, combs back his bard's white hair, forgets to wash, pads barefoot downstairs, opens the front door, stands in the doorway, and, looking out at the day and up at the eternal hill, and hearing the sea break and the gab of birds, remembers his own verses and tells them softly to empty Coronation Street that is rising and raising its blinds.
Dear Gwalia, I know there are towns lovelier than ours, and fairer hills, and loftier far, and groves more full of flowers, and boskier woods more blithe with spring, and bright with birds adorning, and sweeter bards than I to sing their praise this beauteous morning. By Cader Idris, tempest torn, by Moyle Erwithwa's glory, Carney Llewellyn's beauty born, Pinley Moan old in story. By mountains where King Arthur dreams, by penmen Ma defiant, Lahagab Hill, a molehill seems, a pygmy to a giant. By Southey, Senny, Dovey Dee, Edu, Eden, Aled, all. Taff and Towie broad and free, Sluvnant with its waterfall. Clydwen, Clethow, Dule Stow, Ely, Gwili, Uglui Nave. Small is our river Dewi, Lord, a baby on a rushy bed. By Car Kennan, king of time, our heron head is only a bit of stone with seaweed spread, where gulls come to be lonely. A tiny dingle is Milkwood, by Golden Grove near Gondar. But let me choose, and oh, I should love all my life and longer to stroll among our trees and stray in Goosegog Lane and Donkey Down, and hear the Dewies sing all day and never, never leave the town.
The Reverend Jenkins closes the front door. His morning service is over.
Now, woken at last by the out-of-bed sleepyhead, Polly put the kettle on town hall bell. Lily Smalls, Mrs. Bynon's treasure, comes downstairs from a dream of royalty, who all night long went larking with her full of sauce in the milkwood dark, and puts the kettle on the Primus ring in Mrs. Bynon's kitchen, and looks at herself in Mr. Bynon's shaving glass over the sink, and sees...
Oh, there's a face. Where do you get that hair from? Got it from an old tomcat. Give it back then, love. There's a perm. Where do you get that nose from, Lily? Got it from my father, silly. Got it on upside down. Oh, there's a conch. And look at your complexion. Oh, no, you look. Needs a bit of makeup. There's the glamour. Oh, where you get that smile, Lil? Never you mind that, girl. Nobody loves you. That's what you think. Who is it loves you? Shan't tell. Come on, Lily. Cross your heart then. Cross my heart.
And very softly, her lips almost touching her reflection, she breathes the name and clouds the shaving glass.
Lily!
Yes, Mom?
Where's my tea, girl?
Where do you think? In the cat box. Coming up, Mom!
Mr. Pugh, in the schoolhouse opposite, takes up the morning tea to Mrs. Pugh and whispers on the stairs.
Here's your arsenic, dear, and your weed killer biscuit. Throttled the parakeet and spat in the vases. Put cheese in the mouse holes. Here's your nice tea, dear.
Too much sugar.
You haven't tasted it yet, dear.
Too much milk, then. Has Mr. Jenkins said his poetry?
Yes, dear.
Then it's time to get up. Give me my glasses. No, not my reading glasses. I want to look out. I want to see.
Lily Smalls, the treasure, down on her red knees, washing the front step.
Oh, she's tucked her dress in her bloomers. Oh, the baggage.
P.C. Attila Reese, ox broad, barge booted, stamping out of handcuff house in a heavy beef red huff, black browed under his damp helmet.
He's going to arrest Polly Garter, mark my words.
What for, dear?
For having babies.
And lumbering down towards the strand to see that the sea is still there.
Mary Ann Sailors, opening her bedroom window above the tap room and calling out to the heavens.
I'm 85 years, 3 months, and a day.
I will say this for her. She never makes a mistake.
Organ Morgan at his bedroom window, playing chords on the sill to the morning fishwife gulls who, heckling over Donkey Street, observe.
Me, dye bread, hurrying to the bakery, pushing in my shirt tails, buttoning my waistcoat. Ping goes a button. Why can't they sew them? No time for breakfast. Nothing for breakfast. There's wives for you.
Me, Mrs. Dyebread 1, Captain shawled and no old corset. Nice to be comfy, nice to be nice. Clogging on the cobbles to stir up a neighbor. Oh, Mrs. Sarah, can you spare a loaf, love? Dyebread forgot the bread. There's a lovely morning. How's your boils this morning? Isn't that good news now? It's a change to sit down. Ta, Mrs. Sarah.
Me, Mrs. Dyebread 2, gypsy to kill in a silky scarlet petticoat above my knees. Dirty, pretty knees. See my body through my petticoat brown as a berry? High-heeled shoes with one heel missing. Tortoise shell comb in my bright black silky hair. Nothing else but a dab of scent. Lolly-golly at the doorway. Tell your fortune in the tea leaves. Scowling at the sunshine. Oh, and lighting up my pipe.
Me, Lord Cutglass, in an old frock coat belonged to Eli Jenkins, and a pair of postman's trousers from Bethesda Jumble, wandering out of doors to empty slops, mind. There, over, and then wanting it again. Tick-tock.
Me, a no good boy, you. Up to no good in the wash house.
Me, Miss upon my price in my pretty pink house coat, decked at the clothesline, natty as a ginny wren. Then, pit-pat, back to my eggs in its cozy, my crisp toast fingers, my homemade plum and butter pat.
Me, Polly Garter, under the washer line, giving the breast to my bonny new baby. Nothing grows in our garden, only washing and babies. But where's their fathers live, my love? Over the hills and far away. You're looking up at me now. I know what you're thinking, poor little milky creature. You're thinking, you know better than you should be, Polly Garter, and that's enough for me. Oh, isn't life a terrible thing, thank God.
Now, frying pans spit, kettles and cats purr in the kitchen. The town smells of seaweed and breakfast all the way down from Bayview, where Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, in smock and turban, big besom to engage the dust, picks at her starchless bed and sips lemon rind tea, to Bottom Cottage, where Mr. Waldo, in bowler and bib, gobbles his bubble and squeak and kippers and swigs from the sauce bottle. Mary Ann Sailors,
Praises the Lord who made porridge.
Mr. Pugh,
Remembers ground glass as he juggles his omelet.
Mrs. Pugh.
Nags the salt cellar.
Willy-nilly postman.
Downs his last bucket of black brackish tea and rumbles out bandy to the clucking back, where the hens twitch and grieve for their tea-soaked sops.
Mrs. Willy-nilly.
Full of tea to her double-chinned brimmed roads and bubbles over her coven of kettles on the hissing hot range, always ready to steam open the mail.
The Reverend Eli Jenkins.
Finds a rhyme and dips his pen in his cocoa.
Lord Cut Glass in his ticking kitchen.
Scampers from clock to clock, a bunch of clock keys in one hand, a fish head in the other.
Captain Cat in his galley.
Lined and fine-fingered, savors his sea fry.
Mr. and Mrs. Cherry Owen in their Donkey Street room, that is bedroom, parlor, kitchen, scullery, sit down to last night's supper of onions boiled in their overcoats and broth of spuds and bacon rind and leeks and bones.
See that smudge on the wall by the picture of Auntie Blossom? That's where you threw the sago. You only missed me by an inch.
I always miss Auntie Blossom, too.
You remember last night? In you reeled, my boy, as drunk as a deacon with a big wet bucket and a fish frail full of snout. And you looked at me and you said, God has come home, you said. And then over the bucket you went, sprawling and bawling, and the floor was all flagons and eels.
Oh, was I wounded?
And then you took off your trousers and you said, does anybody want to fight? Oh, you old baboon.
Give me a kiss.
And then you sang Bread of Heaven, tenor and bass.
Oh, I always sing Bread of Heaven.
And then you did a little dance on the table.
I did.
Drop dead.
Oh, and then what'd I do?
Then you cried like a baby and said you were a poor drunk orphan with nowhere to go but the grave.
And what did I do next, my dear?
Then you danced on the table all over again and said you were King Solomon Owen and I was your Mrs. Sheba.
And then?
And then I got you into bed and you snored all night like a brewery.
From Baynon Butchers in Coronation Street, the smell of fried liver sidles out with onions on its breath. And listen, in the dark breakfast room behind the shop, Mr. and Mrs. Bynon, waited upon by their treasure, enjoy, between bites, their every morning hullabaloo, and Mrs. Bynon slips the gristly bits under the tasseled tablecloth to her fat cat.
He likes the liver, Ben.
She ought to do, Bess. It's her brother's.
Oh, did you hear that, Lily?
Yes, Mum.
We're eating Pusscat.
Yes, Mum.
Oh, you cat butcher.
It was doctored, mind.
What's that got to do with it?
Yesterday we had mole.
Oh, Lily, Lily.
Monday, otter. Tuesday, shrew.
Oh!
Mrs. Bynon, he's the biggest lawyer in town.
Don't you say that about Mr. Bynon.
Everybody knows it, Mum.
Mr. Bynon never tells a lie. Do you, Ben?
No, Bess. And now I'm going out after the corgis with my little cleaver.
Oh, Lily, Lily.
Up the street, in the Sailor's Arms, Sinbad Sailors, grandson of Marianne Sailors, draws a pint in the sunlit bar. The ship's clock in the bar says 11:30. 11:30 is opening time. The hands of the clock have stayed still at 11:30 for 50 years. It is always opening time in the Sailor's Arms.
Here's to me, Sinbad.
All over the town, babies and old men are cleaned and put into their broken prams and wheeled on to the sunlit, cottled cobbles or out in the backyards under the dancing underclothes and left. A baby cries, "I want my pipe and he wants his bottle." Noses are wiped, heads picked, hairs combed, paws scrubbed, ears boxed, and the children shrilled off to school.
Fishermen grumble to their nets. No good boyo goes out in the dinghy Zanzibar, ships the oars, drifts slowly in the dab-filled bay, and, lying on his back in the unveiled water, among crab's legs and tangled lines, looks up at the spring sky. I don't know who's up there, and I don't care.
He turns his head and looks up at Lregib Hill and sees, among green lathered trees, the white houses of the strewn away farms, where farm boys whistle, dogs shout, cows low, but all too far away for him or you to hear. And in the town the shops squeak open. Mr. Edwards, in butterfly collar and straw hat at the doorway of Manchester House, measures with his eye the dawdlers by for striped flannel shirts and shrouds and flowery blouses, and bellows to himself in the darkness behind his eye.
I love Miss Price.
Syrup is sold in the post office. A car drives to market full of fowls and a farmer. Milk churns stand at Coronation Corner like short silver policemen. And sitting at the open window of Schooner House, blind Captain Cat hears all the mourning of the town.
Maggie Richards, Ricky Reese, Tommy Powell, our Sal, Little Gerwine, Billy Swansea with the dog's voice, one of Mr. Waldo's, Nasty Humphrey, Jackie with the sniff. Where's Dickie's Albie and the boys from T-Pant? Perhaps they got the rash again. Somebody's hit Maggie Richards. 2-1, it's Billy Swansea. Never trust a boy who barks. Right again, it's Billy.
And the children's voices cry away.
That's willy-nilly knocking at Bayview, rat-a-tat. Very soft. The knocker's got a kid glove on. Now, who sent a letter to Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard? Careful now. She swabs the front glassy. Every step's like a bar of soap. Mind your size 12s. That old Bessie would beeswax the lawn to make the birds slip.
Morning, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
Good morning, postman.
Here's a letter for you with stamped and addressed envelope enclosed, all the way from Bilth Wells. A gentleman wants to study birds, and can he have accommodation for 2 weeks and a bath vegetarian?
No.
You wouldn't know he was in the house, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard. He'd be out in the mornings at the bang of dawn with his bag of breadcrumbs and his little telescope.
And come home at all hours covered with feathers. I don't want persons in my nice clean rooms breathing all over the chairs.
Cross my heart, he won't breathe.
And putting their feet on my carpets and sneezing on my china and sleeping in my sheets.
He only wants a single bed, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
Back she goes to the kitchen to polish the potatoes.
Captain Cat hears Willy-nilly's feet heavy on the distant cobbles.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that's Mrs. Rose's cottage. What's today? Well, today she gets the letter from her sister in Goslas. How's the twins' teeth? He's stopping at schoolhouse.
Morning, Mrs. Pugh. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard won't have a gentleman in from Bilth Wells because he'll sleep in a sheet. Mrs. Rose Cottage's sister and Gorsla's twins have got to have them out.
Here, give me the parcel.
It's for Mr. Pugh, Mrs. Pugh.
Never you mind what's inside it.
a book called Lives of the Great Poisoners.
That's Manchester House.
Morning, Mr. Edwards. Very small news. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard won't have birds in the house, and Mr. Pugh's bought a book now on how to do in Mrs. Pugh.
Have you got a letter from her?
Miss Price loves you with all her heart. Smelling of lavender today. She's down to the last of the elderflower wine, but the quince jam's bearing up, and she's knitting roses on the doilies. Last week, she sold 3 jars of boiled sweets, a pound of humbugs, half a box of jelly babies, and 6 colored photos of Larragub. Yours forever, then 21 X's.
Oh, willy-nilly. She's a ruby. Here's my letter. Put it into her hands now.
Mr. Waldo, hurry into the Sailor's Arms. Pint of stout with an egg in it. There's a letter from it.
It's another paternity summons, Mr. Waldo.
The quick footsteps hurry on along the cobbles and up the 3 steps to the Sailor's Arms.
Quick, Sinbad. Pint of stout, and no egg in it.
People are moving now up and down the cobbled street.
All the women this morning are out in the sun. You can tell it's spring. There goes Mrs. Cherry. You can tell her by her trotters. Off she trots, new as a daisy. Now who's that talking by the pump? Mrs. Floyd and Boyo talking flatfish. What can you talk about flatfish? That's Mrs. Diebread 1, waltzing up the street like a jelly. Every time she shakes, it slap, slap, slap. Who's that? Mrs. Butcher Bynum with her pet black cat. It follows her everywhere, meow and all. And there goes Mrs. 23, important. The sun gets up and goes down in her dewlap. And when she shuts her eyes, it's night. High heels now. In the morning, too. Mrs. Rose Cottage's eldest, May, 17 and never been kissed, ho-ho, going young and milking under my window to the field with the nanny goats. She reminds me all the way. Can't hear what the women are gabbing round the pump. Same as ever. Who's having a baby? Who blacked whose eye? Seen Polly Garter giving her belly an airing? There should be a law. Mrs. Bynum's new mauve jumper? It's her old grey jumper died. Who's dead? Who's dying? There's a lovely day. Oh, the cost of soap flakes.
The sound of organ music in the distance.
Organ Morgan's at it early. You can tell it's spring.
And he hears the noise of milk cans.
Hockey milkman on his round. I will say this, his milk is as fresh as the dew. Half dew it is. Snuffle on Hockey watering the town. Somebody's coming. Now the voices round the pump can see somebody coming. Hush. There's a hush. You can tell by the noise of the hush. It's Polly Garter. Hello, Polly. Who's there?
Me, love.
That's Polly Garter. Hello, Polly, my love. Can you hear the dumb goose hiss of the wives as they huddle and peck or flounce at a waddle away? Who cuddled you when? Which of their gandering hubbies moaned in Milkwood for your naughty mothering arms and body like a wardrobe, love? Scrub the floor of the welfare hall for the Mothers' Union social dance. Your one mother won't wriggle her roly-poly bum or pat her fat little buttery feet in that wedding ring holy tonight, though the waltzing breadwinners snatched from the cozy smoke of the Sailor's Arms will grizzle and mope.
A cock crows.
Too late, cock. Too late.
For the town's half over with its mourning.
There's a clip-clop of horses on the sun-honeyed cobbles of the humming streets, hammering of horseshoes, gobble-quacks, and cackle, tom-tit-twitter from the bird-ounced bows, braying on donkey down. Bread is baking, pigs are grunting, chop goes the butcher, milk churns bell, tills ring, sheep cough, dogs shout, saws sing. Oh, the spring whinny and morning move from the clog dancing farms. The gulls gab and rabble on the boat bobbing river and sea, and the cockles bubbling in the sand. Scamper of sanderlings, curlew cry, crow caw, pigeon coo, clock strike, bull bellow, and the ragged gabble of the Bear Garden School as the women scratch and babble in Mrs. Organ Morgan's general shop, where everything is sold. Custard, buckets, henna, rat taps, shrimp nets, sugar, stamps, confetti, paraffin, hatchets, whistle.
Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
La-dee-da.
Got a man in built wells.
And he got a little telescope to look at birds.
Willy-nilly said.
Remember her first husband? He didn't need a telescope.
He looked at them undressing through the keyhole.
And he used to shout, "Tally-ho!"
But Mr. Ogmore was a proper gentleman.
Even though he hanged his colleague.
Seen Mrs. Butcher Bainon?
She said Butcher Banion was put dogs in the mincer.
Go on, he's pulling her leg.
No, don't you dare tell her that. There's a dear.
Or she'll think he's trying to pull it off and eat it.
There's a nasty lot live here when you come to think.
Look at that no-good boyo now.
Too lazy to wipe his snout.
And going out fishing every day, and all he ever brought back was Mrs. Samuels.
Been in the water a week.
And look at Aki Milkman's wife that nobody's ever seen.
He keeps her in the cupboard with the empties.
And think of Dye Bread with his 2 wives.
One for daytime, one for night.
Men are brutes on the quiet.
And how's Organ Morgan, Mrs. Morgan?
You look dead beat.
It's organ all the time with him.
Up every night until midnight playing the organ.
Oh, I'm a martyr to music.
Outside, the sun springs down in the rough and tumbling town. It runs through the hedges of Goose-Gog Lane, cuffing the birds to sing. Spring whips green down Cockle Row, and the shells ring out. Laregib, this snip of a morning, is wild fruit and warm, the streets, fields, sands, and waters springing in the young sun.
Evans the Death presses hard with black gloves on the coffin of his breast in case his heart jumps out.
Where's your dignity? Lie down.
Spring stirs Gossamer Bainon's school mistress like spoon.
What can I do? I'll never be refined if I twitch.
Spring this strong morning foams in a flame in Jack Black as he cobbles a high-heeled shoe for Mrs. Diebread too, the gypsy, but he hammers it sternly out.
There is no leg belonging to the foot that belongs to the Sioux.
The sun and the green breeze ship Captain Cat sea memory again.
No, I'll take the mulatto, by God. Who's captain here? Parlez-vous, Jig, madame?
Marianne Sailors says very softly to herself as she looks out at Laregib Hill from the bedroom where she was born.
It's spring and Ragab in the sun in my old age, and this is the chosen land.
And in willy-nilly the postman's dark and sizzling damp tea-coated misty pygmy kitchen, where the spitting cat kettles throb and hop on the range, Mrs. Willy-nilly steams open Mr. Mogg Edwards' letter to Miss Mafonvi Price and reads it aloud to Willy-nilly by the squint of the spring sun through the one sealed window running with tears. while the drugged, bedraggled hens at the back door whimper and snivel for the licorice bog black tea.
From Manchester House, Larrington, sole proprietor, Mr. Mog Edwards, late of Touche, linen draper, haberdasher, master tailor, costumer, for West End, negligee, lingerie, tea gowns, evening dress, trousseau, layettes, also ready to wear for all occasions. Economical outfitting for agricultural employment our specialty. Wardrobe spot among our satisfied customers, ministers of religion, and JP's fittings by appointment. Advertising weekly in the Church Bugle. Beloved Mifunway Price, my bride in heaven.
I love you until death do us part, and then we shall be together forever and ever. A new parcel of ribbons has come from Carmarthen today. All the colors in the rainbow. I wish I could tie a ribbon in your hair, a white one, but it cannot be. I dreamed last night you were all dripping wet, and you sat in my lap as the Reverend Jenkins went down the street. I see you got a mermaid in your lap, he said, and he lifted his hat. He is a proper Christian. Not like Cherry Owen, who said he should have thrown her back, he said. Business is very poorly. Polly Garter bought 2 garters with roses, but she never got stockings, so what's the use, I say? Mr. Waldo tried to sell me a woman's nighty outsize. He said he found it, and we know where. I sold a packet of pins to Sinbad sailors to pick his teeth. If this all goes on, I shall be in the workhouse. My heart is in your bosom, and yours is in mine. God be with you always, Mavonway Price, and keep you lovely for me in his heavenly mansion. I must now stop and remain your eternal Mog Edwards.
And then a little message with a rubber stamp, shop at Mog's.
And willy-nilly, rumbling, jockeys out again to the 3-seated shack called the House of Commons in the back, where the hens weep and sees in sudden spring shine
herring gulls heckling down to the harbor where the fishermen spit and prop the morning up, and I the fishy sea smooth to the sea's end as it lulls in blue. Green and gold money, tobacco, tinned salmon, hats with feathers, pots of fish paste for the winter to be, weave and leap in it, rich and slippery in the flash and shapes of fishes through the cold sea streets. But with blue lazy eyes, the fishermen gaze at the milkmaid whispering water, with no nick or ripple, as though it blew great guns and serpents and typhooned the town.
Too rough for fishing today.
And they thank God, and God but a gull for luck, and moss slow and silent make their way uphill from the still, still sea towards the sailors' arms as the children
Spank and scandals off and singing out of the school into the draggle-tail yard. And Captain Cat, at his window, says soft to himself the words of their song.
Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail kept their baby in a milking pail. Flossie Snail and Johnny Crack, one would pull it out, one would put it back. Oh, it's my turn now, said Flossie Snail, to take the baby from the milking pail. And it's my turn now, said Johnny Crack, to smack it on the head and put it back. Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail kept their baby in a milking pail. One would put it back and one would pull it out. And all it had to drink was ale and stout, for Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail always used to say that stout and ale was good for a baby in a milking pail.
The music of the spheres is heard distinctly over Milkwood. It is the rustle of spring.
a glee party sings in Bethesda graveyard, gay but muffled.
Vegetables make love above the tenors.
And dogs bark blue in the face.
Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard belches in a teeny hanky and chases the sunlight with a fly whisk, but even she cannot drive out the spring. From one of the finger bowls a primrose grows.
Mrs. Diebread 1 and Mrs. Diebread 2 are sitting outside their house in Donkey Lane, one darkly, one plumply blooming in the quick, dewy sun. Mrs. Diebread 2 is looking into a crystal ball which she holds in the lap of her dirty yellow petticoat, hard against her hard, dark thighs.
Cross my silver. Out to the housekeeping money. Ah.
What do you see, lovey?
Oh. I see a feather bed with 3 pillows on it and a text above the bed. I can't read what it says. There's great clouds blowing. Oh, now they have blown away. God is love.
That's our bed.
And now it's vanished. The sun's spinning like a top. Who's this coming out of the sun? It's a hairy little man with big pink lips. He's got a walleye.
It's Diebread.
Shh. The feather bed's floating back. The little man's taking his boots off. He's pulling his shirt over his head. He's beating his chest with his fist. Ooh, he's climbing into bed.
Go on, go on.
Well, there's 2 women in bed. He looks at them both with his eyes cocked on one side. He's whistling through his teeth. And now he grips his little arms around one of the women.
Which one? Which one?
I can't see anymore. There's great clouds blowing again.
Ugh, the mean old clouds.
The morning is all singing. The Reverend Eli Jenkins, busy on his morning calls, stops outside the welfare hall to hear Polly Garter as she scrubs the floor for the Mothers' Union dance tonight.
Now I loved a man whose name was Tom. He was strong as a bear and 2 yards long. And I loved a man whose name was Dick. He was big as a barrel and 3 feet thick. And I loved a man whose name was Harry, 6 feet tall and sweet as a cherry. But the one I loved the best, awake or asleep, was little Willie Wee, and he's 6 feet deep. Oh, Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such a loving again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Wee was the man for me. Now men from every parish round run after me and roll me on the ground. But whenever I love another man back, be it Johnny from the hill or Sailing Jack, I always think as they do what they please of Tom, Dick, and Harry, who are tall as the trees. Most I think when I'm by their side of little Willie Wee, who drowned and died. Oh, Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such a loving again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Weasel was the man for me.
Praise the Lord. We are a musical nation.
And the Reverend Jenkins hurries on through the town to visit the sick with jelly and poems.
The town's as full as a lovebird's egg,
There goes the Reverend.
says Mr. Waldo at the smoked herring brown window of the unwashed Sailor's Arms.
With his brawly and his oods. Fill him up, Sinbad. I'm on the treacle today.
The silent fishermen flush down their pints.
Oh, Mr. Waldo,
Sighs Sinbad Sailors.
I dote on Gossamer Bainon.
Love, sings the spring. The bed-spring grass bounces under birds' bums and lambs. And Gossamer Bainon, school teacher, spoon-stirred and quivering, teaches her slubbered gudlin children.
It was a lover and his lass, and a hey and a ho and a hey lonely no.
No, your accents, children. It was a lover and his lass with a hey and a ho and a hey nonny no.
Oh, Mr. Waldo,
says Sinbad Sailors.
She's lady all over.
And Mr. Waldo, who is thinking of a woman soft as Eve and sharp as sciatica to share his bread pudding bed, answers,
No lady that I know is.
And if only Grandma'd die, cross my heart, I'd go down on my knees, Mr. Waldo, and I'd say, Miss Gossamer, I'd say.
When birds do sing, hey ding-a-ding-a-ding, sweet lovers love the spring.
Polly Garter sings, still on her knees.
Tom, Dick, and three fine men, and I'll ever have such a
ding-a-ding
again.
And the morning school is over, and Captain Cat, at his curtained schooner's porthole opened the spring sun-tides, hears the naughty, forfeiting children tumble and rhyme on the cobbles.
Gossamer Bainon high heels out of school. The sun hums down through the cotton flowers of her dress, into the bell of her heart, and buzzes in the honey there, and couches and kisses, lazy loving and boozed, in her red berried breast. Eyes run from the trees and windows of the street, steaming gossamer, and strip her to the nipples and the bees. She blazes naked past the Sailor's Arms, the only woman on the diatomed earth. Sinbad Sailors places on her thighs still dew-damped from the first man-growing cockcrow garden, his reverent goat-bearded hands.
I don't care. It is common.
She whispers to her salad day deep self.
I want to gobble him up. I don't care if he does drop his H's.
She tells the stripped and mother of the world, big-beamed and Eve-hipped spring of herself.
So long as he's all cucumber and hooves.
Sinbad Sailors watches her go by, demure and proud and schoolmarm in her crisp flower dress and sun-defying hat, with never a look or lilt or wriggle, the butcher's unmelting ice-maiden daughter, veiled forever from the hungry hug of his eyes.
Oh, Gossamer Bainon, why are you so proud?
He grieves into his Guinness.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Gossamer Bee, I wish that you were to be for me. I wish you were not so educated.
She feels his goat beard tickle her in the middle of the world like a tuft of wiry fire, and she turns in a terror of delight away from his whips and whiskery conflagration and sits down in the kitchen to a plate heaped high with chips and the kidneys of lambs.
In the blind-drawn, dark dining room of schoolhouse, dusty and echoing as a dining room in a vault, Mr. and Mrs. Pugh are silent over cold grey cottage pie. Mr. Pugh reads as he forks the shroud meat in from Lives of the Great Poisoners. He has bound a plain brown paper cover around the book. Slyly, between slow mouthfuls, he side-spies up at Mrs. Pugh, poisons her with his eye, then goes on reading. He underlines certain passages and smiles in secret.
Persons with manners do not read at table,
Says Mrs. Pugh. She swallows a digestive tablet as big as a horse pill, washing it down with clouded pea soup water.
Some persons were brought up in pigsties.
Pigs don't read at table, dear.
Bitterly she flicks dust from the broken cruet. It settles on the pie in a thin gnat rain.
Pigs can't read, my dear.
I know one who can.
Alone in the hissing laboratory of his wishes, Mr. Pugh minces among bad vats and jeroboams, tiptoes through spinneys of murdering herbs, agony dancing in his crucibles, and mixes, especially for Mrs. Pugh, a venomous porridge unknown to toxicologists, which will scald and viper through her until her ears fall off like figs, her toes grow big and black as balloons, and steam comes screaming out of her navel.
You know best, dear,
Says Mr. Pugh, and quick as a flash he ducks her in rat soup.
What's that book by your trough, Mr. Pugh?
It's a theological work, my dear. Lives of the great saints.
Mrs. Pugh smiles. An icicle forms in the cold air of the dining vault.
I saw you talking to a saint this morning, Saint Polly Garter. She was martyred again last night. Mrs. Organ Morgan saw her with Mr. Waldo.
And when they saw me, they pretended they were looking for nests,
said Mrs. Organ Morgan to her husband, with her mouth full of fish as a pelican's.
But you don't go nesting in long combinations, I said to myself, like Mr. Waldo was wearing, and you're dressed nearly over your head like Polly Garters. Oh, they didn't fool me.
One big bird gulp, and the flounder's gone. She licks her lips and goes stabbing again.
And when you think of all those babies she's got, then all I can say is she'd better give up bird nesting. That's all I can say. It isn't the right kind of hobby at all for a woman that can't even say no, even to midgets. Remember Bob Spit? He wasn't any bigger than a baby, and he gave her two. But they're two nice boys, I will say that. Fred Spit and Arthur. Sometimes I like Fred best, and sometimes I like Arthur. Who do you like best, Organ?
Bach. Without a doubt. Bach every time for me.
Organ Morgan, you haven't been listening to a word I said. It's organ all the time with you.
And she bursts into tears, and in the middle of her salty howling, nimbly spears a small flatfish and pelicans whole.
Oh, and then Palestrina,
says Organ Morgan.
Lord Cutglass, in his kitchen full of time, squats down alone to a dodge dish marked Fido of peppery fish scraps and listens to the voices of his 66 clocks, one for each year of his loony age, and watches with love their black and white, moony, loud-lipped faces tucking the earth away. Slow clocks, quick clocks, pendulum de heart knocks, china, alarm, grandfather, cuckoo, clocks shaped like Noah's whirring ark, clocks that bicker in marble ships, clocks in the wombs of glass women, hourglass chimers, to wit to woo clocks, clocks that pluck tunes, Vesuvius clocks, all black bells and lava, Niagara clocks that cataract their ticks, old-time weeping clocks with ebony beards, clocks with no hands forever drumming out time without ever knowing what time it is. His 66 singers are all set at different hours. Lord Cutglass lives in a house and a life at siege. Any minute or dark day now, the unknown enemy will loot and savage downhill, but they will not catch him napping. 66 different times in his fish slimy kitchen, ping, strike, tick, chime, and tock.
The lust and lilt and lather and emerald breeze and crackle of the bird praise and body of spring, with its breasts full of rivering May milk, means to that lordly fish head nibbler nothing but another nearness to the tribes and navies of the last black day, who'll sear and pillage down Armageddon Hill to his double-locked, rusty-shuttered, tick-tock, dust-scrabbled shack at the bottom of the town that has fallen head over bells in love.
I'll never have such loving again.
Pretty Polly hums and sings.
When farmers' boys on their first fair day come down from the hills to drink and be gay, before the sun sings, I lie there in their arms for the good bad boys from the lonely farms. But I always think as we tumble into bed of little Willie Wee, who is dead, dead, dead.
The sunny, slow, lulling afternoon yawns and moons through the dozy town. The sea lolls, laps, and idles in, with fishes sleeping in its lap. The meadows still as Sunday, the shut-eye tasseled bulls, the goat and daisy dingles snap happy and lazy, the dumb duck ponds snooze, clouds sag and pillow on Laregib Hill, pigs grunt in a wet wallow bath and smile as they snort and dream. They dream of the acorn swill of the world, the rooting for pig fruit, the bagpipe dugs of the mother sow, the squeal and snuffle of yeses of the women pigs in rut. They mud bask and snout in the pig-loving sun, their tails curl, they rollick and slobber and snore to deep, smug after-swill sleep. Donkeys angelically drowse on donkey down.
Persons with manners,
snaps Mrs. Cold Pew,
do not nod at table.
Mr. Pugh cringes awake. He puts on a soft soaping smile. It is sad and grey under his nicotine egg-yellow weeping walrus Victorian mustache, worn thick and long in memory of Dr. Crippen.
You should wait until you retire to your sty,
says Mrs. Pugh, sweet as a razor. His fawning, measly quarter smile freezes. Sly and silent, he foxes into his chemist's den, and there, in a hiss and Prussic circle of cauldrons and vials, brimful with pox and the Black Death, cooks up a fricassee of deadly nightshade, nicotine, hot frog, cyanide, and bat spit for his needling, stalactite hag, and bed nag of a poker-backed nutcracker wife.
I beg your pardon, my dear.
He murmurs with a wheedle.
Captain Cat, at his window thrown wide to the sun and the clippered seas he sailed long ago when his eyes were blue and bright, slumbers and voyages. earringed and rolling, I love you, Rosie Probert, tattooed on his belly. He brawls with broken bottles in the fug and babble of the dark dock bars, roves with a herd of short and good time cows in every naughty port, and twines and souses with the drowned and blousy breasted dead. He weeps as he sleeps and sails.
One voice of all he remembers most dearly as his dream buckets down. Lazy early Rosie with the flaxen thatch, whom he shared with Tom Fred, the donkeyman, and many other seamen, clearly and near to him speaks from the bedroom of her dust. In that gulf and haven, fleets by the dozen have anchored for the little heaven of the night. But she speaks to Captain Napping Cat alone. Mrs. Probert.
From Duck Lane, Jack. Quack twice and ask for Rosie.
Is the one love of his sea life that was sardined with women.
What seas did you see, Tomcat, Tomcat, in your sailoring days long, long ago? What sea beasts were in the wavery green when you were my master?
I'll tell you the truth. Seas barking like seals, blue seas and green, seas covered with eels and mermen and whales.
What seas did you sail, old whaler, when on the blubbery waves between Frisco and Wales, you were my bosun?
As true as I'm here, dear you, Tomcat's tart, you landlubber Rosie, you cozy love, my easy as easy, my true sweetheart. She's green as a bean, she's gliding with swans in the seal-barking moon.
What seas were rocking, my little deckhand, my favorite husband, in your sea boots and hunger, my duck, my whaler, my honey, my daddy, my pretty sugar sailor, with my name on your belly when you were a boy long, long ago.
I'll tell you no lies. The only sea I saw was the seesaw sea with you riding on it. Lie down. Lie easy. Let me shipwreck in your thighs.
Knock twice, Jack, at the door of my grave and ask for Rosie.
Rosie Probert.
Remember her. She is forgetting. The earth which filled her mouth is vanishing from her. Remember me. I have forgotten you. I am going into the darkness of the darkness forever. I have forgotten that I was ever born.
Look,
says a child to her mother as they pass by the window of Schooner House.
Captain Cat is crying.
Captain Cat is crying.
Come back. Come back.
Up the silences and echoes of the passages of the eternal night.
He's crying all over his nose.
Says a child. Mother and child move on down the street.
He's got a nose like strawberries.
The child says. And then she forgets him too. She sees in the still middle of the blue-bagged bay no good boyo fishing from the Zanzibar.
No good boyo gave me 3 pennies yesterday, but I wouldn't.
The child tells her mother.
Boyo catches a whalebone corset. It is all he has caught all day. Bloody funny fish. Mrs. Diebread, too, gypsies up his mind's slow eye, dressed only in a bangle. She's wearing a gown
Would you like this nice wet corset, Mrs. Dibred, too?
No, I won't.
And a bite of my little apple? He offers with no hope.
She shakes her brass nightgown, and he chases her out of his mind. And when he comes gusting back, there in the bloodshot center of his eye, a geisha girl grins and bows in a kimono of rice paper.
I want to be a good boy, but nobody let me.
He sighs as she writhes politely. The land fades, the sea flocks silently away, and through the warm white cloud where he lies, silky, tingling, uneasy Easter music undoes him in a Japanese minute.
The afternoon buzzes like lazy bees round the flowers, round Mayrose Cottage. Nearly asleep in the field of nanny goats who hum and gently butt the sun, she blows love on a puffball.
He loves me, he loves me not. He loves me, he loves me not. He loves me, the dirty old fool.
Lazy, she lies alone in clover and sweetgrass. 17, and never been sweet in the grass. Ho, ho.
The Reverend Eli Jenkins, inky in his cool front parlor or poem room, tells only the truth in his life work. The population, main industry, shipping, history, topography, flora and fauna of the town he worships in. The White Book of Laregib. Portraits of famous bards and preachers, all fur and wool from the squint to the kneecaps, hang over him heavy as sheep, next to faint lady watercolors of pale green milkwood like a lettuce salad dying. His mother, propped against a pot in a palm, with her wedding ring waist and bust-like black-clothed dining table, suffers in her stays.
Oh, angels, be careful there with your knives and forks.
He prays. There is no known likeness of his father Esau, who, undog-colored because of his little weakness, was scythed to the bone one harvest by mistake when sleeping with his weakness in the corn. He lost all ambition and died with one leg.
Poor Dad.
Grieves the Reverend Eli.
To die of drink and agriculture.
Farmer Watkins in Salt Lake Farm hates his cattle on the hill as he hoes them into milking.
Damn you, damn dairies!
The cow kisses him.
Bite her to death!
He shouts to his deaf dog, who smiles and licks his hands.
Gore him! Sit on him, Daisy!
He bawls to the cow who barbed him with her tongue, and she moos gentle words as he raves and dances among its slumber-breathed slaves, walking delicately to the farm. The coming of the end of the spring day is already reflected in the lakes of their great eyes. Bessie Bighead greets them by names that she gave them when they were maidens.
Peg, Meg, Buttercup, Moll, Fan from the Castle, Theodosia, and Daisy.
They bow their heads.
Look up Bessie Bighead in the White Book of Laregib, and you will find the few haggard rags and the one poor glittering thread of her history laid out in pages there, with as much love and care as a lock of hair of first lost love. Conceived in Milkwood, born in a barn, wrapped in paper, left on a doorstep, big-headed and bass-voiced, she grew in the dark until long-dead Gomer Owen kissed her when she wasn't looking, because he was dared. Now in the light she'll work, sing, milk, say the cow's sweet names, and sleep until the night sucks out her soul and spits it into the sky. In her lifelong low light, Holily Bessie milks the fond, lake-eyed cows as Zuck showers slowly down over bar, sea, and town. Utah Watkins curses through the farmyard on a cart horse,
Help, you bleeding cripple!
and the huge horse neighs softly as though he had given it a lump of sugar. Now the town is dusk. Each cobble, donkey, goose, and gooseberry street is a thoroughfare of dusk and ceremonial dust, and night's first darkening snow and sleep of birds drift under and through the live dusk of this place of love. Neregib is the capital of dusk. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, at the first drop of the dusk shower, seals all her sea-view doors, draws the germ-free blinds, sits erect as a dry dream on a high-backed, hygienic chair, and wills herself to cold, quick sleep. At once, at twice, Mr. Ogmore and Mr. Pritchard, who all dead day long have been gossiping like ghosts in a woodshed, planning the loveless destruction of their glass widow, reluctantly sigh and sidle into her clean house.
After you, Mr. Ogmore.
After you, Mr. Pritchard.
No, Mr. Ogmore. You widowed her first.
And in through the keyhole, with tears where their eyes once were, they ooze and grumble.
Husbands,
she says in her sleep. There is acid love in her voice for one of the two shambling phantoms. Mr. Ogmore hopes that it is not for him. So does Mr. Pritchard.
I love you both.
Oh, Mrs. Ogmore.
Oh, Mrs. Pritchard.
Soon it will be time to go to bed. Tell me your tasks in order.
We must take our pajamas from the drawer marked pajamas.
And then you must take them off.
Down in the dusking town, May Rose Cottage, still lying in clover, listens to the nanny goats chew, draws circles of lipstick round her nipples.
I'm fast. I'm a bad lot. God will strike me dead. I'm 17. I'll go to hell,
she tells the goats.
You just wait. I'll sin till I blow up.
She lies deep, waiting for the worst to happen. The goats champ and sneer.
And at the doorway of Bethesda House, the Reverend Jenkins recites to Laregib Hill his sunset poem.
Every morning when I wake, dear Lord, a little prayer I make. Oh, please to keep thy lovely eye on all poor creatures born to die. And every evening at sundown, I ask a blessing on the town, for whether we last the night or no, I'm sure is always touch and go. We are not wholly bad or good, who live our lives under Milkwood, and thou, I know, wilt be the first to see our best side, not our worst. Oh, let us see another day. Bless us all this night, I pray. And to the sun we all will bow and say goodbye, but just for now.
Jack Black prepares once more to meet his Satan in the wood. He grinds his night teeth, closes his eyes, climbs into his religious trousers, their flies sewn up with cobbler's thread, and pads out, torch and Bibled, grimly, joyfully, into the already sinning dusk.
Off to Gomorrah!
And Lily Smalls is up to no good boyo in the wash house.
And Cherry Owen, sober as Sunday, as he is every day of the week, goes off happy as Saturday to get drunk as a deacon, as he does every night.
I always say she's got two husbands,
says Cherry Owen.
One drunk and one's sober.
And Mrs. Cherry simply says,
And aren't I a lucky woman because I love them both?
Evening, Cherry.
Evening, Sinbad.
What'll you have?
Too much.
The Sailor's Arms is always open.
Sinbad suffers to himself, heartbroken.
Oh, Gossamer, open yours.
Dusk is drowned forever until tomorrow. It is all at once night now. The windy town is a hill of windows, and from the lapped waves the lights of the lamps in the windows call back the day and the dead that have run away to sea. All over the calling dark, babies and old men are bribed and lullabied to sleep.
Hushaby, baby, the Sandman is coming.
Goodbye, Grandpa, in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. Down will come Grandpa, whiskers and all.
Or their daughters cover up the old unwinking men like parrots, and in their little dark, in the lit and bustling young kitchen corners, all night long they watch, beady-eyed, the long night through in case death catches them asleep.
Unmarried girls, alone in their privately bridal bedrooms, powder and curl for the dance of the world. They make, in front of their looking glasses, haughty or come-hithering faces for the young men in the street outside, and the lamplit leaning corners, who wait in the all-at-once wind to wove and whistle.
The drinkers in the sailors' arms drink to the failure of the dance.
Down with the waltzing and the skipping.
Ah, dancing isn't natural.
Righteously, says Cherry Owen, was just down 17 pints of flat, warm, thin Welsh bitter beer.
A farmer's lantern glitters, a sparkling on Laregab hillside.
Regib Hill, writes the Reverend Jenkins in his poem room.
Laregab Hill, that mystic tumulus, the memorial of peoples that dwelt in the region of Laregab before the Celts had left the land of summer, and where the old wizards make themselves a wife out of flowers.
Mr. Waldo, in his corner of the sailor's arms, sings,
In Pembroke City, when I was young, I lived by the castle keep. 6 cents a week was my wages for working for the chimney sweep. 6 cold pennies he gave me, not a farthing more or less. And all that I could afford was parsnip, gin, and watercress. I did not need a knife and fork or bib up to me chin to dine on a dish of watercress and a jug of parsnip gin. Did you ever see a growing boy to live so cruel cheap on grub that has no flesh and bone and liquor that makes you weep? Sweep, sweep, chimney sweep, I wept through Pembroke City, poor and barefoot in the snow, till a kind young woman took pity. Poor little chimney sleep, she said, black as the ace of spades. Oh, nobody swept my chimney until my husband's went his ways. Come and sweep my chimney, come and sweep my chimney, she sighed to me with a blush. Come and sweep my chimney, come and sweep my chimney, bring along your chimney brush.
Blind Captain Cat climbs into his bunk. Like a cat he sees in the dark. Through the voyages of his tears he sails to see the dead.
Dancing Williams?
Still dancing.
Jonah Jarvis?
Ill.
Curly Bevan's skull.
Rosie, with God. She has forgotten dying.
The dead come out in their Sunday best.
Listen to the night breaking.
Organ Morgan goes to chapel to play the organ. He sees Bach lying on a tombstone.
Johann Sebastian!
Who?
Johann Sebastian! Mighty Bach! Oh, Bach, Bach!
To hell with you,
says Cherry Owen, who is resting on the tombstone on his way home. Mr. Mogg Edwards and Miss Mavanry Price, happily apart from one another at the top and the sea end of the town, write their every night letters of love and desire. In the warm white book of Laregib you will find the little maps of the islands of their contentment.
Oh, my Maud, I'm yours forever.
And she looks around with pleasure at her own neat, never dull room, which Mr. Mogg Edwards will never enter.
Come to my arms, my fawn way.
And he hugs his lovely money to his own heart. And Mr. Waldo, drunk in the dusky wood, hugs his lovely Polly Garter under the eyes and rattling tongues of the neighbors and the birds, and he does not care. He smacks his live red lips. But it is not his name that Polly Garter whispers as she lies under the oak and loves him back. 6 feet deep that name sings in the cold earth.
I'll always think, as we tumble into bed, of little Willie Wee, who is dead, dead, dead.
The thin night darkens. A breeze from the creased water sighs the streets close under milk-waking wood. The wood, whose every tree foot's cloven in the black glad sight of the hunters of lovers, that is a God-built garden to Marianne's sailors who knows there is heaven on earth, and the chosen people of his kind fire in Laregib's land, that is the fair days, farmhands wantoning ignorant chapel of bridesbed, and to the Reverend Eli Jenkins, a green-leaved sermon on the innocence of men. The suddenly wind-shaken wood springs awake for the second dark time this one spring day.